In a small town where the sun barely reached the cracked pavement, a janitor named Marcus swept the floors of an old diner. He was a man of few words, his presence often unnoticed, much like the dust he diligently swept away. Every day, he arrived at dawn, wielding a broom like a sword against the dirt that seemed to cling to the establishment. He took pride in his work, moving rhythmically through the diner, ensuring that each booth was clean, each table dust-free. The diner, known as Rosie's, had seen better days. Its neon sign flickered hesitantly, and the once bustling atmosphere was now muted, filled with the sound of distant traffic and the hum of the refrigerator. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Rosie, had poured her heart into the diner, but economic downturns had left her weary and worried. The regulars had dwindled, and so had the profits, making each day a battle to keep the doors open. One chilly afternoon, as the autumn leaves danced their way across the street, Marcus noticed a figure huddled against the diner's wall. It was a woman, wrapped in a tattered coat that seemed 2 sizes too large for her slender frame. Her hair, matted and tangled, framed a face that bore the signs of hardship. A cardboard sign rested on her lap, the letters faded but still pleading, "Hungry. Please help." Marcus's heart sank. He had seen too many people like her in recent years, those worn down by life's relentless struggles. He felt an urge to help, one that clashed with the fear of what Rosie might say. With hesitation, he approached her. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down to meet her gaze. "Hi," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes were hollow yet held a flicker of hope. "I can't give you much, but, you hungry?" he asked, glancing back at the diner. Her face lit up for a moment, then faded again as reality crept back in. "I haven't eaten all day," she admitted. Marcus knew Rosie's rules. No free meals, especially for beggars. But the janitor also knew that sometimes, breaking the rules was the only way to make a difference. "Wait here," he instructed gently, and with a resolve he didn't quite feel, he slipped inside the diner. Rosie was busy wiping down the counter, her brow furrowed with the weight of the world. "How's it looking, Marcus?" she asked without looking up. "Same old, Rosie," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. "But there's a woman outside, she's hungry." Rosie paused, finally meeting his gaze. "We can't afford to feed everyone, Marcus. We're barely scraping by as it is." "I know," he said, "but I can bring her something. Just leftovers." "Please?" Rosie hesitated, caught between the reality of her dwindling resources and the empathy that flickered in Marcus's eyes. After a moment that stretched uncomfortably, she sighed, her defenses crumbling. "Fine. Just this once." With a silent nod of gratitude, Marcus hurried to the kitchen, gathering a plate of uneaten fries and a half-eaten sandwich. He didn't want to take much, just enough to fill the empty pit in the woman's stomach. He wrapped the food in a paper napkin, tucking it under his arm. As he stepped back outside, the chill of the air bit at him, but the thought of the woman's hunger warmed his resolve. He approached her, holding out the makeshift meal. "Here, it's not much, but I hope it helps," he said, his heart racing with the simple act of kindness. "Thank you," she said, tears welling in her eyes as she took the food. In that moment, they shared a silent understanding, a connection forged by the weight of unspoken struggles and a flicker of humanity amidst the hardships. Little did they know that unseen eyes were watching from within the diner. In the dimly lit back room, a security camera captured the entire exchange. The owner, Rosie, was about to discover that the moment would ripple far beyond the walls of the diner, altering the lives of everyone involved in ways they could never have anticipated. The evening fell slowly over the diner, cloaking Rosie's establishment in shadows and the lingering scent of grease. As the last rays of sunlight surrendered to the night, the dull hum of fluorescent lights buzzed above, and the occasional sound of silverware clinking against plates filled the empty spaces. Rosie had closed up early, tired from the long hours and the weight of a declining business. After Marcus finished his shift, he gathered his belongings, still feeling the warmth of the encounter with the woman. He couldn't shake off the image of her grateful smile, the way her eyes sparkled momentarily before she dove into the food. That brief moment of connection had rekindled his spirit, which had been dimmed by years of hardship. But Rosie, sitting in the dim light of the back room, was engrossed in her thoughts, oblivious to the lingering power of that simple act. She replayed the day's events in her mind, feeling the constant stress of her financial struggles pressing down on her chest. She hadn't expected to see Marcus step outside to help a stranger. It was not the first time he had defied her wishes, but this felt different. As she finished cleaning up the day's mess, her curiosity got the better of her, and she glanced at the security feed. She had always checked the camera footage at the end of the day to ensure everything was in order, safety being paramount in a world that seemed increasingly volatile. Today, however, she found herself compelled to view the interaction between Marcus and the beggar. As the screen flickered to life, Rosie's heart tightened. There was Marcus, his gentle demeanor contrasting starkly with the rough exterior of the woman. He knelt beside her, and Rosie watched, her breath hitching as she noticed the tenderness in his eyes, the way he spoke to her with respect and compassion. The world outside seemed to fade as she focused on the footage, drawn into their silent exchange. Then, as she watched the woman gratefully accept the food, Rosie's heart shifted. There was a familiarity about the woman that tugged at something deep within her. It was not just the desperation or the ragged clothing, but the sorrow etched into her features, as if she bore the weight of the world on her shoulders. Rosie's eyes widened in recognition. She had seen this woman before, several months back, sitting in front of the supermarket with a similar cardboard sign. Suddenly, the realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. This woman had once been a part of their community, someone who had lived a life not unlike Rosie's own before fate had turned against her. It dawned on Rosie that the woman wasn't just a beggar, she was a mother, a sister, perhaps even a daughter. It could have been her, the whims of life could have easily flipped the coin, and Rosie could have been the one outside, hungry and desperate. Overwhelmed by a surge of emotion, Rosie pressed her hands to her chest as she continued watching. The familiar pangs of empathy collided with the harsh reality of her own situation. She had fought tirelessly to keep her diner afloat, often blind to the suffering outside her doors. It was as if the camera had pulled back a veil, exposing a truth she had intentionally overlooked. Suddenly, the screen flickered again, and Rosie froze. As the footage progressed, the woman, her hunger momentarily quelled, glanced around as if searching for something, or someone. Then, unexpectedly, her gaze shifted to the camera, her eyes locking onto the lens as if she could feel the weight of Rosie's scrutiny. It was a moment laden with emotion, a silent plea for understanding, for compassion. The exchange was brief but heavy, and as the woman turned away, Rosie felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't just about a meal anymore, it was about dignity, about recognizing shared humanity. What had started as a simple act of kindness had transformed into a mirror reflecting the struggles they all faced. Rosie leaned back in her chair, her heart racing. A shift was happening within her, a realization that she couldn't ignore. She had to do something, but what? The stakes were high, and the challenges insurmountable. But for the first time in a long time, Rosie felt a flicker of hope amidst the weight of her burdens. Little did she know, this moment would be the catalyst for a series of events that would intertwine their lives in ways none of them could foresee, leading to an unexpected revelation that would change everything. The following day, the sun rose lazily over the small town, casting long shadows across the streets and warming the cracked pavement. The air was crisp, and a fresh breeze carried with it the promise of change. Rosie arrived early at the diner, her mind racing with the images of the woman and Marcus from the previous day. She knew she had to do something, but the uncertainty of how to act gnawed at her. As she unlocked the diner's door, the familiar chime of the bell above announced her arrival. The scent of stale coffee lingered in the air, a reminder of the long nights she had spent at the counter, pondering her dwindling business and the paths life had led her down. But today felt different. Today, she felt a stirring within her, a sense of purpose that had been absent for far too long. Marcus appeared shortly after, broom in hand, ready to begin his shift. He greeted Rosie with a nod, sensing the tension that lingered in the air. "Morning, Rosie." "Everything okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed in concern. Rosie hesitated, the weight of her thoughts momentarily silencing her. She glanced at the window, where the sun glinted off the glass, illuminating the empty street outside. "I'm thinking we need to make some changes, Marcus," she finally said, her voice steady yet filled with determination. "Changes," he replied, puzzled. "What kind of changes?" "We can't just keep doing the same thing and expect different results," she continued, her resolve growing. "I was thinking, what if we offered a meal to those in need? A pay-what-you-can meal, or a free meal for anyone who's really struggling?" Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. "You mean like feeding the homeless?" "Rosie, we can barely keep the diner running as it is." "I know," she said, her tone firm yet compassionate. "But after seeing that woman yesterday, I realized that we have to do more. It's not just about money, it's about being a part of this community. We can help in small ways, even if it's just one meal at a time." Marcus studied her for a moment, sensing the depth of her conviction. "If you really think it can work, then I'm with you," he said, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. "But we'll need to spread the word and get others involved. Maybe even create a day where everyone can contribute." The two of them brainstormed throughout the morning, developing a plan that felt both daunting and exhilarating. Rosie imagined a community lunch every Wednesday, where anyone could come in, share a meal, and connect. They would place a jar on the counter for donations, every little bit helping to keep the initiative alive. As the day progressed, the diner began to fill with the usual patrons, regulars who greeted Rosie with familiar smiles and Marcus with nods of acknowledgement. But today, there was an undercurrent of excitement in the air, a palpable energy that stirred something deep within them all. When Rosie shared her idea, most patrons were receptive, some even offering to help in any way they could. Among them was a young couple, Jenna and Kyle, who frequented the diner after work. They had recently started volunteering at a local shelter and were enthusiastic about the new initiative. "We could help spread the word," Jenna exclaimed. "We know some people who could bring in food donations, and we can help serve." As Rosie looked around at the smiling faces, her heart swelled with hope. This was more than just about feeding people, it was about creating a network of support, a community willing to lift each other up. Meanwhile, outside the diner, the beggar woman, who had become a ghost in Rosie's thoughts, wandered the streets aimlessly, her stomach growling in protest. Her name was Emily, and life had pushed her to the fringes of society, where she felt invisible and alone. Today, she had no particular destination in mind, just a longing for a warm meal and a brief escape from her struggles. As she turned the corner, the familiar flicker of Rosie's diner came into view. The last time she had seen it, she had been scrounging for coins in her pockets to buy a cup of coffee. Now, something felt different about the place. The door was open wider than usual, and laughter spilled out like sunlight. Tentatively, she approached, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. But just as she reached for the door, she hesitated, recalling the judgmental looks she had received before, the whispers that followed her around like shadows. Yet today, something pulled her inside. It was as if the diner had called out to her, promising warmth and kindness. Little did she know, as she stepped over the threshold, that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The initiative Rosie had begun would weave their lives together, and soon, Emily would find herself embraced by a community she had long thought lost to her. In that moment, the ripple effects of a single act of kindness began to unfold, shifting the dynamics of their lives and setting the stage for a transformative journey that would challenge the very notions of identity, community, and redemption. As Emily stepped into Rosie's diner, the warmth enveloped her like a soft blanket. The familiar scent of fried food and brewed coffee filled the air, but it was the laughter and chatter of the patrons that struck a chord deep within her. For a moment, she stood frozen at the entrance, absorbing the vibrant atmosphere that felt foreign yet inviting. She had come seeking food, but what she found was a bustling hub of kindness, hope, and community. Marcus was behind the counter, chatting animatedly with a couple of regulars while Rosie moved gracefully between tables, a bright smile on her face as she interacted with customers. It was a sight that warmed Emily's heart, even as doubts crept into her mind. Would they see her as she truly was, or just another beggar? "Hey there. You look like you could use a meal," Rosie called out, her voice cutting through the din. She noticed Emily lingering by the entrance, uncertainty etched across her features. "Come on in. We've got some food that would make anyone feel right at home." Emily hesitated for a moment, then took a tentative step forward. It felt as though all eyes turned to her, a spotlight shining on her ragged clothing and unkempt hair. But instead of judgment, she saw curiosity and compassion reflected back at her. As she approached the counter, Rosie handed her a warm plate of food, a hearty portion of soup, and a slice of freshly baked bread. "Here you go," Rosie said gently, her voice imbued with sincerity. "It's on the house. Welcome to our community lunch." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, and she quickly blinked them away, embarrassed. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. With the plate in hand, she made her way to an empty table, the warmth of the food contrasting sharply with the chill that had settled in her bones from the night before. As she took her first bite, the flavors danced on her tongue, filling the void that had consumed her for days. Around her, laughter and conversations blended into a symphony of life that she had almost forgotten existed. As the minutes passed, she observed the interactions around her. Families chatted, friends shared stories, and even Marcus joked with a group of regulars, his spirit lighter than she remembered. A sense of belonging swelled within her, and for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not just as a beggar, but as a person deserving of kindness. Rosie noticed Emily enjoying her meal and felt a surge of satisfaction. The decision to offer free meals had been daunting, but watching someone truly savor the food made it worthwhile. She approached Emily's table, kneeling down to her level. "How's the food? Is it to your liking?" Emily looked up, her heart racing. "It's really good," she replied, the corners of her mouth lifting into a shy smile. "Thank you for this. I didn't think anyone would care." Rosie's heart softened at Emily's vulnerability. "You're not alone. We all go through tough times. This diner is for everyone, especially those who need it most. I want you to feel welcome here." A few patrons nearby turned their heads, listening in. Kyle and Jenna, who had been serving at another table, exchanged glances and nodded, their smiles reflecting their shared commitment to the initiative. As the lunch hour continued, more patrons came in, and the diner began to fill with laughter and conversation. Rosie saw more people from the community filtering in, some familiar faces who had perhaps lost touch with the importance of kindness. It was a beautiful sight, a microcosm of what humanity could achieve when they chose to embrace each other. Before long, word spread about Rosie's community lunch, and it became a regular event. Emily returned day after day, each time greeted by friendly faces and nourishing meals. Slowly, she found her footing among the diners. She began helping out with small tasks, like cleaning tables and serving food, eager to contribute in any way she could. As weeks turned into months, Emily formed friendships that began to fill the empty spaces in her life. She connected with other patrons who had also faced struggles, sharing stories of resilience and hope. The diner became a sanctuary, a place where they all gathered not just for food but for fellowship. Meanwhile, Rosie's business flourished. The initiative attracted attention, and soon, local businesses began to donate food and supplies. They held fundraisers and community events, drawing in more patrons than Rosie could have ever hoped for. It was a symbiotic relationship, the diner feeding the community while the community fed the diner. Through this journey, Rosie learned that the diner had always been more than just a place to eat. It was a lifeline, a bridge between people from different walks of life. And at its heart was the belief that every person mattered, that every meal served could be a step toward healing. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Rosie stood outside the diner, watching Emily share a laugh with Marcus and the young couple. The sight warmed her heart, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had transformed not just the diner but their community. In that moment, she realized that life is an intricate tapestry, woven with threads of kindness, compassion, and unexpected connections. Sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness, a simple meal shared, to spark a change that reverberates far beyond one diner, reshaping lives and revitalizing spirits. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over Rosie's diner, it felt like a new beginning for everyone involved, one filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of brighter days ahead. And in the heart of it all was the understanding that they were stronger together, forever connected by the threads of compassion and community. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.